Welcome to the Tesla Economist. Please hit the thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. With this tax bill potentially coming in, one thing it does mean is China can't compete with Tesla in the US. The tax bill does not include Chinese EVs. In other words, even if China make an actual car that is competitive with Tesla, then Tesla will get a $10,000 advantage, not to mention the extra cost of transporting from China to the US. This is actually quite serious for the Chinese EVs, as they were perhaps the only potential competition for Tesla. Most of us are far past the narrative that legacy autos have any chance of competing with Tesla. Those of us that have done our research are aware that the Chinese EVs pose a bigger threat to Tesla. I say threat, but that's not really an accurate term. As far as I can see, there are no competitive threats to Tesla. If you infer threat as something that can take sales from Tesla, these Chinese EVs simply take away more market share of ICE autos. Tesla will be supply constrained for some time to come, as in they can't keep up with their demand. Therefore, if a company sells everything they can possibly make, no other company can essentially pose a threat to their sales. Now, I know everyone wants to tell me how big a car market China is, and that they are leading in EV sales. Yes, you could say that. China does literally buy more vehicles a year than the US in quantity, and China also makes more EVs too. But when you get down to the actual numbers, as in dollars, which is generally how a market size is calculated, then the US auto market is over 3 times the size. And when you look at what Chinese EVs are selling the most, they pose no threat to Tesla. The best-selling one after Tesla costs around $4,000 US. China is not as rich a country as the US. Therefore, they can create products to cater to a less affluent market. These cars would not even be legal to sell in Europe or the US due to safety standards. Therefore, that makes the US officially the largest auto market and EV market. But with this tax bill, then China is essentially kept out of it. And this is by design. The US want to win the EV race, both in sales and manufacturing. This is a massive disadvantage for China. It means that US manufacturers can more affordably manufacture EVs. The more they manufacture, the more economies of scale increase, resulting in more efficient manufacturing techniques and better technology through R&D. Although the problem for the legacy auto companies is that they are simply too far behind Tesla. In other words, it's mainly Tesla's market, and the US government have just kept China out of it. This means that by the time the tax credit has been phased out, Tesla would have established themselves so well in the US and be absolutely synonymous with EVs that the market is so saturated, it's likely too late for the Chinese. Not to mention the charging infrastructure Tesla would have by that stage. What does this mean for the Chinese EVs? Well, the bill is not entirely clear on whether it includes EVs that are made in China or Chinese EV companies. If it's just the former, then it's possible the likes of NIO could set up their own manufacturing facilities in the US and thus take full advantage of the credits. But I don't think this will be likely. It will also be quite ironic, a Chinese company setting up manufacturing in the US. It would mean that the Chinese companies will focus more of their concentration within China itself, building up infrastructure. I also think it means that they won't have Tesla in their way quite as much, as I think Tesla will have to somewhat neglect their growth in China in lieu of faster expansion in the US, due to the extra profit they can achieve through the US tax credits. The result would be that Tesla will have a smaller market share in China, but China will have little presence in the US at all. It will likely mean that the Model 2 in China will be delayed a few years too. What is it they say? God laughs when people make plans? Well, EVs are a new industry, and we're in early stages. Things can happen fast. And when government get involved to try and control things, then everything can change that much faster. Okay, so China have likely lost the largest EV market, but that doesn't mean they can't expand outside of China. NIO is already making progress on growing their market share in Europe. However, as it's not their home turf, they won't have their government to help them quite as much. They also have their issues with the battery swap stations. If NIO are insistent on that technology, then it's an absolute infrastructure nightmare, not to mention how over-engineered the entire thing is to begin with. It adds significantly to cost too, given that so many more batteries are required. Battery swap may have been NIO's way to position themselves different in the market from Tesla, but I don't like it. It adds so much complexity and holds back their progress. NIO are starting with Norway due to the enormous incentives the Norwegian government offer their citizens to buy electric cars. I remember when I was in Oslo a few years ago, around the time of the launch of the Model 3, and I looked out the window from my hotel room and saw 3 Model S's behind one another stopped at the lights. Norway is an incredibly rich country. Their sovereign wealth fund is worth over $1 trillion. Ironically, the money came from oil. Therefore, the European battleground for the Chinese automakers will be whatever Tesla are producing from Berlin, and then most likely Volkswagen, as they seem to be the most determined of the European legacy companies to make a serious effort. Although Renault are doing well with the likes of their electric Zoe, I can't see them scaling up to the level Volkswagen can. I can't see Tesla expanding much of their Berlin plant, as they'll probably put more effort into the US. Tesla are engineer and battery constrained. They can only grow so fast at a time. They have to decide what markets to apply said resources in. But they would want to establish a presence in Europe and maintain a market share. They have to achieve this with perhaps 1 or 2 million Model Ys a year and neglect other EV markets for the time being until they have the US under control. Even at this rate, it will take Volkswagen a very long time to catch up. For example, 2 million Model Ys a year would require in the order of 150 gigawatt hours of batteries. On Volkswagen's Power Day, their target was to reach 6 40 gigawatt hour battery factories by 2030. That's only 240 gigawatt hours of batteries a year in 9 years' time. Yes, that's insane. This is how far ahead Tesla is from the competition. There isn't anyone close. It takes a really long time to design a good battery, let alone refine the manufacturing process, and then design a car as electric from the ground up and put it into production. And forget about it trying to come close to Tesla's level today, but this is 5 to 10 years of work. By the time they catch up, for lack of a better word, then Tesla would have been long finished with that technology and already moved on. Okay, well perhaps Tesla will still manage to maintain a decent presence in Europe. It will just be a bit slower than initially thought, but I think Tesla have the time they need to still dominate Europe. It may take Tesla 2 more factories to catch up with demand in the US, 1 potentially a Model 2 factory, and 1 for the Northeast US. I wouldn't expect Fremont moving over to 4680 batteries anytime soon though. Anyway, I think there's a really good chance that China EVs will really struggle to compete with Tesla now, considering the majority of the manufacturing advances will now occur in the US rather than China. In other words, hard to steal the intellectual property. Due to the tax credits, there'll be so much more manufacturing, research, development, resources and infrastructure in the US for EVs, as everything associated will become that much more profitable. With supply and demand, when we increase prices, then eventually the hand of the free market will match it with additional supply. We will see more engineers come out of schools, more mining for battery and EV related parts. Suddenly, this industry, in its largest market, the US, has suddenly become the equivalent of around $10,000 more profitable for every car sold. This will be a huge catalyst to the US EV market. Imagine how much more investments become feasible for Tesla with this much additional profit per car. Think how much faster they may be able to roll out their charging network and service centres. Universities will likely offer more courses related to manufacturing and batteries. America may once again become a serious manufacturing country. This will all create more economies of scale for the EVs, but not only those that are set up in the US to make the most of it. And by the way, in case you didn't know, those who can make the most of it are simply those that will control the largest supply of batteries. Currently, that is Tesla, by about an order of magnitude. Through economies of scale, Tesla will be able to evolve that much faster than the Chinese autos, through selling to a much more profitable, larger market that China are not able to cater to. Thanks for listening. Please hit the thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe.